we're here to help students from all across the art, science, and engineering, but also I coordinate efforts with the Simon School, Eastman, Warner School of Medicine and Dentistry, to really help out all of our students at the University of Rochester maximize and optimize their degrees and go on to the world outside of U of R and do amazing things.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Joe.
Um,
So I did mention that we are ending a little early because you actually have another engagement to run off to. Do you mind telling everyone a bit about it? And I'll pop the link in the chat so they can check it out.
Absolutely. So I'll be jumping onto a LinkedIn Live session. So anyone's welcome to join and shift over to the LinkedIn Live. Me and a few of my colleagues from around the country that work in the higher ed tech sector, as well as other universities. We'll be talking about kind of future forecasting, thinking about, obviously the pandemic and some of the social justice issues that we're facing right now are very prominent, and getting ready for the fall and what's going to happen in the fall is a front of mind for a lot of people. But we're also kind of thinking about what's going to stick and what's going to maybe continue to evolve after this fall semester sort of passes. What does the spring look like? What is next summer? What is the future? How is it maybe permanently shifting because of some of the things that we're learning over the last 6 months, and that we'll continue to learn over the next few months. So I think it should be a really interesting conversation. I think it's definitely a very casual, informal discussion. People can be parents, people from working at universities, as well as students and alumni from our institutions. So great opportunity just to throw some questions in. And we're kind of piloting it. We're prototyping the model. We might do it again in the future if people find it helpful and good discussion. I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun.
Great. Yeah, no, I do think I was looking at it earlier and I was like, wow, like this is a stellar group of people. Like the conversation is going to be so good.
It should be. I think we're all good friends as well as colleagues. So I think it will be hopefully a very approachable and authentic discussion about what some of our thoughts are and maybe some ways that we can tackle some of these challenges that we're facing and that students and alumni are facing as well.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Okay, so to jump right into the conversation today, one thing that I've noticed just over the past few months and in general, you do a lot of interviews, whether it's, well, mostly I see the ones that aren't necessarily a job interview, but even like the panel coming up, even these AMAs, you're doing all sorts of interviews. And last week you were a part of a Facebook Live session for Careers Uncorked. And I'd love if you just reflected a little bit on that experience and what was that like?
Yeah, and if you can find the link today, that'd be great. Maybe we could share a post of Careers Uncorked's profile on LinkedIn. So Careers Uncorked is a program, a online program or a series, I guess. A couple of our alumni started from University of Rochester, which was really fun. So they asked me to kind of jump in and they wanted to interview me and have some questions. But I think broadly speaking, I enjoy these conversations. I enjoy obviously the ones that are a little bit more informal and casual, like the one we have today all the time
Yeah.
on our AMA. But I think the most important thing for me is having some level of preparation beforehand, understanding what the context is, knowing what the limits are of like what I am comfortable talking about or what I do know and what I don't know. I think that there's a lot of parallels to job interviewing when I think of it, right? So you have to prepare a little bit. You have to know kind of what your story is. You have to not try to overextend yourself and answer things that maybe you're not familiar or comfortable with, because that can get you into more trouble than not most times. So I think there are a lot of parallels to I think about the work we do or the advice
Mhm.
I've given students and alumni in the past as they prepare for like sort of the more of a formal job interview process. But I think for me, it's always trying to get to a conversational place. How do we get to a place where we can have a conversation? And I think, virtually that can be challenging sometimes, especially if you can't see, like I can't see you right now today.
Mhm.
When you can't see the other person, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. But I think there are ways to do that. And I think a lot of it has to do with your own comfort level and achieving that and doing it more often. So I think I've done enough of these now, virtually and in person, that
Yeah.
I've arrived at a certain comfort level that I think I still get nervous and I still have like my stomach turns a little bit before I ever do any of these kinds of things. But by and large, I think I have a certain level of comfort. I think definitely with interviewing and like job interviewing, that comfort's pretty high just because I feel like it's a space that I'm so familiar with in helping other students. And it's almost cathartic that you're like
Yeah.
giving advice to other people. You kind of are thinking about your own way of doing it and the process by which you kind of get ready for that. Does that answer your question? I think
Yeah, it does.
yeah.
Yeah. One thing I watched your interview with them, and you had made a comment towards the end, which I thought was really insightful just on the person of who you are and your competitiveness a little bit. But they had sprung a fake scenario to you where you had to pretend to be a student at the U of R
Yeah.
and you were being interviewed for a position at Apple, and you killed it being put directly on the spot. And towards the end, you had told them that you were undefeated on job interviews since 2002, which is that's quite the statement. And I mean, congratulations to you on all of your success. But I'm sure everyone listening is really curious, like, what's your secret?
Um, it was more taking a jab at those two for not telling me that they were going to do that, and I think they thought they were gonna catch me out and get like a gotcha moment. So I think that was part of it. I don't, and this is different. I think for um, current undergraduates, right? So if I went back to my undergraduate days, I was like, I did not get, I was like 0 for like 40 on the job interviews. But as I got older and I went through and I actually like focused my energy and the things that I wanted to do, I think my lens by which of the opportunities I was applying for became really narrow, right? I wanted to
Mhm.
work in certain parts of higher education and certain types of institutions. And so I only applied for jobs, honestly, that I actually was highly interested in. And
Yeah.
my job search was pretty focused. And I, had built up a certain level of experience by that point when I was in graduate school in 2002. I was graduating graduate school. So I was pretty narrowly focused. I think had a certain level of confidence in like my ability to that point of what I've built in terms of my like experience and internships and jobs that I had had. So I really only applied for things that I wanted. And after that, after I got my first job after graduate school, I literally only like put in a handful of applications over a period of like 15 years because I was very much strategic about like where I was in life and my family as
Mhm.
well as geographic sort of constraints. I think that's pretty typical as people get older is that your job search evolves from as a college student, you're kind of casting a wide net. You're
Mhm.
looking for a variety of things. You might be really open to a variety of things because you're not necessarily sure about what you want to do. So you might still be in that exploration phase. And I think that's very much the case for our current undergraduates that, you know what, I'm still looking, I'm still thinking about different things I want to do. I'm still open to a variety of things and geographic locations and industry sectors. So casting a wide net is critical. And I think in a competitive environment that we're in right now, I think it's really important to cast a wide net and to sort of be active in that process, right? Let's not forget, like 20 years ago, like the entire landscape of job searching was completely different, right? The internet
Mhm.
transformed it, and really, this has been accelerated in the last 10 years. So it's created a whole different dynamic. Like when I graduated college, I was mailing my application still.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah, I'm a little older than you are. So like I was like faxing and mailing applications for jobs. So I know I don't look like I'm really that old, but that's what the situation was in the late 90s. So the ability, the convenience of being able to like a handshake to send
Mhm.
a resume really easily, really fast to a lot of opportunities has changed the dynamic of what that looks like. So I think that, so that's, I think it's important to sort of contextualize, right?
Sure.
That piece of it. I think my age and my career where I was, I think that changed. I became much more selective and much more targeted in, what I was going after and the kinds of opportunities that I was looking at. But I think the preparation piece is really still that hasn't changed, whether I'm applying for one job every 5 years or 40 jobs in my senior year of college. How prepared are you to go out there and tell your story? And at the end of the day, I think my story has gotten stronger and stronger because I grow more confident in myself and what it is that I want to do. I think as a college student, you can be open and unsure as to what specific things you want to pursue and do. But the key thing still is the story. What did,
Mhm.
what's your background? What have you done? How have you gotten to where you are? What are the things that are important to you? Why is it that you want to pursue or try out different things? What's the value you can bring to an organization, and what is the value you think the organization can provide to you? I think this generation of college student, those are really critical things, and I think it's important to examine that, because you'll have more jobs in the first 10 years of your careers than someone like I did in my first 10 years of my career. And that, I think, is an important distinction as well, is that the moving up and advancing, it looks a little different than it was. And so how do all those pieces fit together to start to
Sure.
create more of a storyline for you? And I think Sid and Sharfuz, the hosts of Career Uncorked, I think they're really great examples of that in terms of what their aspirations are. They have like side jobs, they have their main job, um,
Mhm.
but everything's kind of interconnected in terms of like what their interests are. And I think if you talk to them or listen to them, they kind of weave that together in something that's cohesive in terms of their own story. That is the really critical piece, I think, for students, is really answering and reflecting on that question: what's my story, and how do
Mhm.
I convey that to someone in a way that's actually interesting and that really feels authentic to you? I think I've gotten better at this over the years, but I know I was really bad when I first graduated college. I was awful, and I never went to my career center, so maybe that was the problem. But I was pretty poor interviewer early on, and I think that's just gotten better over the years.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that it comes with practice, right? Like similar to what you said with being prepared, I think practice is such a huge component of interviewing. And one thing that you said that I found really interesting as I sit here and reflect a little bit of my own experiences, when I've been there too, where you're fresh out of college, you're in college and you're casting such a wide net. And in that moment, you have to. But as you do progress a little bit more in your career and you start to have a little bit more alignment with the positions you are applying for, the experience really changes.
Yeah.
And I think that is a part of the process that we don't even really talk about much, is that once you're kind of moving through that flow of a process, like the way that you even approach and look at interviews is a little bit different. Like I find them maybe even less intimidating because I'm walking in and I really know that this position aligns really well with my interests and where I want to go. And it's not some like random thing that I'm just applying for because I desperately need a job in this moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
that came through in your interview. I think you did a great job when you
Oh,
interviewed
thanks.
our team, um, because I think there was a clear narrative that you had for that. So as I think about this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of translate to like, what can students be doing right now, and what are
Yeah.
some resources for them? I think it's spending time to write out and think through different elements of your story and your background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just like what did you do like on your resume, but what was the meaning or the purpose or the value of those experiences? What did you learn from those things? Why did you choose to participate in those things? What did you feel you left as a mark in those, whether it's a student organization, an internship, research? And then what did you like sort of take away from that you think is now helpful to you as you think about the next step and what's coming up? I think it's thinking, number two, sort of really thinking about the results and the outcomes. I
Yeah.
think more and more, I think employers want to see what was the result. So you did X, Y, and Z, but what was the outcome? Did you help an organization advance something? Was there some way to quantify, and not only quantify just in a number sense, but like quantify in the sense of like the mark you left? What was the impact
Mm-hmm.
you had? So the results oriented is really key, because that's going to be a function of any job that you have, regardless of industry. It's going to be key. So I think it's making sure you're thinking about like what's the result of some of those efforts that you did. I think the third thing is really being reflective and thoughtful about how things interconnect with each other. So it's not just like these segmented silos of experiences, like internship, student organizations, and my courses. How do those things actually interact? How do you take things you've learned in class and apply them to an internship, and how is that relevant to the organizations you've been part of? And then the most critical part is, how does that actually all relate to what it is you're applying for, the opportunity that you might be applying for, whether it's a part-time job on campus, an internship, a job, full-time job, graduate school. So it's the interconnection between the things you've done and then the relationship to what it is you're applying for. And some of the quick resources that I think you should be taking advantage of: doing mock interviews with not only our advisors in our office, but with each other, with your friends, with your peers. It's just, once again, to Danae's point, practicing just like how it sounds out loud. Many students are really good writers and they're really thoughtful, but when it comes to verbalizing that, it's a whole different experience, and trying to articulate that verbally. So practicing with an advisor or with peers is key. We're going to be doing a lot more with alumni this fall and involving alumni in different ways. And I think alumni can be a great sounding board, and ways to practice how these things sound. They're maybe less intimidating. There's sometimes a lot of them want to help and want to give advice and insight, especially our younger alumni. So we're going to be doing a big campaign with our alumni this fall, and this actually started this summer, to mobilize them and get them involved in a variety of things that students can interact with them directly. So that will be on Handshake. You'll be able to see some of those programs and events we're doing. We're going to be working with student organizations to bring more employers and alumni into the fold so that they can practice with them. But I think it's trying to get comfortable to the get to that space that's conversational and comfortable. And I think for some students that comes really naturally. For others, it takes a little effort and a little bit of time to get to. So as a good example, I'm very comfortable interviewing for jobs. I really don't like networking. I don't like going to networking events and like the 60-second commercial. Like that's not my wheelhouse of interest or comfort. And so I think we all have different ways that we have to sort of balance that, but practicing is definitely the critical piece, and there's resources available for students to do that while at UR.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for diving into that a little bit more.
No problem.
Okay, so we do have a question coming in that I want to get to. So,
Yep.
what advice do you give current university students to do this time of year, end of summer, early fall, as they are preparing to return to academics but look towards future employment opportunities?
That's a great question. I think this is the perfect time to set up a meeting or an appointment with an advisor to kind of reflect, right? To have the advisor ask you questions and you to really think about what just happened this past summer, especially this summer, which for many people, it's been a weird one, just because plans might have been interrupted. But what did you do? How did you use your time? And what is once again, it's a maybe informal way of practicing how to talk about it, but this is a really important time to reflect back on what just happened and what's been happening for you in the last year or two. And then once again, how does that translate into future plans? I think it's also a good time to maybe set, some parameters or ideas as to what do you want to get out of this upcoming year? If you're job searching, what does that look like? Are there certain parameters by which you are setting for yourself that are interested in some of these jobs? And I think oftentimes, in my experience working with students, sometimes I'll initiate a conversation and they'll say, like, I'm open to anything. I'll take any job, I'll go anywhere, and then I'll just take whatever's available. The reality is that's probably not true, right? I think there's sometimes those limits to what you actually want to do,
Mm-hmm.
what your interests are, and what are you skilled or prepared to do as well as an immediate contribution. So this is a good time to take stock of all that, and start to put some structures around your search moving forward, but also reflecting going backwards. And I think the last thing is it's a great time to reach out to alumni and different organizations to just get informal conversations and advice. And you don't have to have a game plan as to like telling them exactly what your life plans are, but really being curious, asking questions, saying like, hey, how has the pandemic impacted your industry or your job or your company? So it's really getting curious and staying curious as you interact with folks over the next few months. But this is just an opportune time because it is a little bit of a lull. You might be coming off of an experience this summer and getting ready for classes
Mm-hmm.
to start. And so I think that reflection time, our advisors are available in our office. There's some great resources that Danae shared in the chat that can help sort of jumpstart some of the thinking. I think it's a really interesting time to kind of maybe game plan for the year, while reflecting on in the background, and then just taking in some insights from alums or even your peers to understand maybe what they're thinking. Because I think that sometimes, for me at least, it's jogged my like ideation and ideas that I've had just by having reflective conversations with folks that might be maybe different, or maybe even going into different industry sectors than I was. But I think it sometimes isn't helpful to get the sort of the blood flowing and the ideas going.
Yeah, great. I think so. So we do have another question. Are there any updates about the fall virtual career fair that you would like to share with us at this time?
Yeah, I'm really excited actually.
Me too.
Obviously everyone could, everyone's pivoted hard in March to kind of offer virtual things and this and that. And we were no different. I think we've responded really well. I think all of our services that we were offering in person on campus are available online. So advisors, workshops, programs, employer events, alumni engagements, all being offered. If anything, some of them have been even more greatly enhanced, just because we've been able to identify more people and more opportunities for that engagement. So I think I'm looking forward to that. And I think one of the fun things is Handshake, our platform where we have all our jobs and internships. If you're not familiar with that, you should definitely complete your profile and fill out information, because there's a ton of resources in the platform. But they're launching their virtual sort of I want to call it a fair, but it is and it isn't, right? And so I think it's a way that we're going to have employers registering that are going to be able to engage with students directly. And the cool thing is that students can go in and pre-register or pre-sign up to meet with employers for 10-minute one-on-one conversations. So different than the in-person fair where you have to wait in a line and you have to hopefully you get a conversation, maybe you get a couple of minutes. These you can actually go in ahead of time, pre-register, sign up for employers you want to talk to, and have a good bit of time, 5-10 minutes one-on-one with somebody to engage with them. The other thing if you're that's intimidating to you, is that employers can offer 30-minute basically overview sessions of your company as well as the opportunities available. So you can sign up for those as well. So we'll be launching that out to students soon to be able to pre-register and sign up for things. But September 24th, is that right, Danae? Is that date? Am I getting the
I'm
date?
pretty sure. Yeah.
It'll be from 3 to 6. So no matter where you are around the world, you can participate in this. So this is not, once again, not location specific. So anywhere students are around the world can join in. We'll be having employers sign up. We have alumni that are signing up their organizations. And we'll be then doing more of those throughout the fall and in the spring as well. So this is not just a one-time thing. We're going to offer it in the fall. We're going to pilot and prototype it, see how well it goes, get feedback from students, and do more of these in the future around maybe certain industry sectors, or just kind of more generically any companies that are hiring, be active on it. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a little different experience for students. We've been monitoring some of the test runs that Handshake has done, and they've gone really, really well. So I think the student experience is going to be really gratifying. And so now we're in the mode of just getting companies and alumni to register and join us for this event in September. But there can be a litany of other employer engagement, alumni engagement opportunities that we're going to be working on. And the last thing I'll say about that is, if there are students and student organizations that want to do something and want to partner with us, they have ideas, like bring it on. I think that's something that we want to do and work with student leaders and students more directly to generate those ideas. So if you have ideas, reach out to me or Danae or any of the advisors in the office and pitch us your idea. And if you think there's a student need that we're not hitting, then we want to definitely meet that. If it's a certain industry sector, if it's a certain topic that you think a group of you are feeling anxiety about, we're happy to talk to you and think about how we can bring more of that information to students. But the virtual employer engagement and expo, I think it's going to be something that's going to be different, but I think going to be very beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to see how it all plays out. I think it's going to be really interesting, especially now, just how much more accessible it might feel for some students to actually connect with the employer. So I think that's so exciting. And we do only have a couple minutes left. So before we wrap up, Joe, obviously it's been a very interesting summer, right? And I was hoping that you could reflect a little bit and share some major takeaways just from your experience this summer, and obviously doing the AMA and other things going on with the pandemic. I'd love to just hear your final, what is it like on TV shows or quiz shows where they do like the final take at the very end and recap things. So that's what I'm looking for from you basically in your last few minutes of our summer AMA series.
Sure. Um, you know, I think going into the summer, I think a lot of us, we didn't know what to expect, to be quite honest with you. And I think going into the fall, I think there's still a level of that um, uncertainty that still exists, even though I hate that term, but I think there still is a level of like, what's going on and what's going to happen and how is this going to impact. So I think I've been, really pleasantly surprised by the adaptability and resiliency of a lot of our staff on campus and our team in particular, but also the students. I think they really kind of just try to pivot and make the most of the situation, whether they lost their internships, whether they're still job searching. It's difficult. And I think some people have taken a step back and say, you know what, I'm just going to take this time and maybe pause and give some thought as to like what's next. And I was talking to a class of 2020 graduate the other day, and she got into graduate school, but she's deferred a year. And she kind of was home with her parents, and she said, you know what, I'm just going to I haven't stopped doing something for 4 years, if not more. And this is really gratifying. And this is something that maybe I should just lean into. So I think everyone's really handled it and managed it differently. And there's different pressures and anxieties that different people have. And it's a very individual thing. And I think that's really important. That I will never say anything that's too blanketed, right? That's like, well, all students are this and all students should do X. Because I think this experience around the pandemic, this experience around some of the elements around Black Lives Matter, I think has it really impacted people very differently. And I think the response is going to be very authentic and individual. And I think that we as a team and as a university have to acknowledge that and support and meet students where they're at. And I think that's an important lesson that we've taken, at least I've taken from the summer, because I've talked to a number of people, and I think it's so unique and it's so individualized. So I think a lot of the times I start with the question of like, how are you doing? Where's your head at? Like, how are things going? What's that been like? Not just to assume like it's been hard, it's been difficult, like it's been, X, Y, Z. So I think that it's one of the takeaways for me is reminding myself it's very individualized in terms of the experience. I'm reminding myself to ask that question of how people are doing, because I think that has a massive effect on a job search or an internship search or how to maximize your time at the university, because it takes a toll on that. So I think that individual headspace has been important for me. And I think I've had to remind myself of that, my own kind of experience through the summer and what that's meant for me and my family and this and that, but also the impact it's had on others as well. So I think those are definitely some of the key takeaways. And I've talked a lot about adaptability this summer, and that's important, but that means different things to different people, and you have to be ready and I think comfortable to take that on. But our community is really key to supporting that. And I've always thought that the U of R community has been really strong, and it's been great, supportive of me. And since I've been at U of R, I know that we try to provide that for students, the team of students that we have on our team, on our staff. And I think that's something that's going to be really critical to getting through the fall is, are we there for each other? Are we looking out? Are we supportive of each other? And really, I think finding ways to have that connection, that community, whether we're in person or not, I think is going to be critical. I think it underscored the importance of that, if nothing else, this summer.
Yeah, I love that, Joe. And I had a conversation, just for my 2 cents on what you just said. I had a conversation the other day with a friend where we're all asking each other, well, how are you doing during this time, right? And I think there's even some responsibility on our end that when we're asked that, to really answer that as truthfully as you feel comfortable with. I know it's really easy for all of us to be like, oh, fine, good, like, you know how it goes, right? Or like quarantine life, hashtag, whatever. But I think that it's important to really take a second, because if someone is asking how they're doing, they're most likely really looking for that connection, right? So that's just something I've been really thinking about a lot when I am asked that, to really reflect and like, what can I say to just better communicate how I'm feeling and how I'm doing? That's not just your average, I'm fine, thanks, how are you, you know?
I think it's a good point. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we are just about out of time. I do want to thank everyone for joining us today, and to remind you to head on over to LinkedIn for the future forecasting panel going on in just a couple minutes. Joe will be hopping on over there, and I'm sure it's going to be such a great conversation. So if you have some time, check it out.
And we'll be back with AMAs this fall as well, right? Tonight we're going to be doing them monthly through the fall.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing them monthly during the fall. And we'll have more information to share as we figure out and finalize some dates. So stay tuned. Keep an eye out on our website for updates and our social media. And we'll be in touch with you all soon.
Thanks, Danae. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.